Alright folks, here's the situation.
This song isn't about West Virginia. It's about the western part of Virginia.
Today we're going to talk about how Russia hacked the state election systems and voting machines and the surprise they had waiting for Hillary Clinton if she had won. First off, if you're new here, hey. If you're a subscriber, howdy. Second order of business, I seem to have captured the eye of the Kremlin with the last video. Which, if you haven't seen it yet, it will be on the screen in that banner thing above, or in the description down below. Final order of business, if you like the video, give it a like. If you don't, well, just keep it to yourself. Also, subscribe for more content. I have a lot of really cool videos coming down the pipeline, and I'm always in search for new ideas, so if you have an idea, put it down in the comment section down below. Also, make sure you watch the video till the end. That's all, let's hop right into it.
I'm sure they'd think again if they had a friend like Ben.
In 2016, the Russians interfered with the election in a lot of ways, but the one we're focusing on today is the hacking of state election systems. Of all the Russian attacks in 2016, this one is probably the most damning. While influencing social media discouraged people from voting, incited riots and inflamed tensions, this type of interference in US elections has been around for a while, going back to the French putting a finger on the scale back in the late 1700s. However, this Russian effort is unprecedented. The Russian social media attack didn't affect one's ability to vote. The line in the sand in a lot of election interference in foreign elections is changing votes, preventing people from voting, or changing who can vote. And Russia not only crossed that red line, they crossed it like 17 times.
Russian hackers tried to breach election systems in 21 states, including Connecticut. Homeland Security says the hacking attempts happened last year, right before the election. In some states, computer systems were scanned but not breached, and vote counting software was not compromised. Russia continues to deny any such involvement.
Since this news report from 2017, it has been found that all 50 states had their election systems hacked by the Russians. Now let's address the elephant in the room. What's a state election system? No, that's not it. Get out. How did you even get in here? A state election system is something that contains voter registration data, voting information, voter eligibility, and voting history, not as in like who you voted for, but like in what elections you voted in. Now, to what extent each state is still not fully disclosed for a lot of states, but what we do know is that Russia was in a position to delete or change voter information. That leaves two distinct possibilities. The first, they actually did delete or change voter data. This is particularly harmful because if someone is removed from the voting roll, they show up to vote on election day, they won't be able to do so. This can be considered just as bad as actually changing vote totals, because really all you have to do is choose a few precincts based off demographic data like race, gender, age, and party preference, then kick a few hundred people off of a voting roll and you've effectively put your finger on the scale. It would also explain what happened in Durham, North Carolina on election day in 2016.
It hasn't been problem-free. In fact, it started a little bit rocky for voters out here, and it's all due to a technical glitch that started on a computer. So normally when you go inside here, you would check in, they would get on a computer and get your name and your information to see who's voting, right? Well, that's a system that had a glitch and required them to go back to paper polling, the old school way of doing it. So we went in there to get some video of that. Basically now it's a big stack of papers that has every registered voter on it, and they have to check you in that way. Now,
it is common for voting systems to glitch. Often those running polling locations are a bit older, so those glitches are often new screens they haven't seen or the system not responding right away. No knock on those people running the polling locations, they are just angels. But this glitch in Durham was not that. Dozens of voters were told they were ineligible to vote and were turned away at the polls, even when they displayed correct registration cards. Others were sent from one polling place to another only to be rejected when they arrived. Hundreds of voters were incorrectly told that they had cast ballots days earlier. In several precincts, voting was stopped for over 2 hours. Local officials insist that it was just a software glitch and a human error. And it's very well possible that it was. However, in the fall of 2017, the New York Times reported that 3 voting machines that provided the voter roll equipment, software, as well as the voting machines were hacked by the Russian government in 2016. One of these companies was supplying the voter equipment in Durham. The government has been very hardline in the response, saying repeatedly that no vote counts were altered. But that's where the reassurance stops. The government has been purposefully numb on any assurance regarding back-end voting equipment. In fact, it's gone out of its way to not say anything about it.
Are you deferring the investigation of this to the FBI? Or is the department actually actively engaged in investigating the penetration or the attempts to penetrate the voter files in this country immediately before the election by the Russian government?
I share your concern. I don't disagree with anything you said relative to the sanctity of our voting process. Clearly, it's should be an interagency investigation, and that is taking place. DHS will be part of that.
The second possibility is that they didn't change anything, which raises perhaps an even bigger question. If they did nothing, what did they gain from this mission? They could have inflicted a lot of damage if they did something, which means that they must have gotten something much more rewarding out of it. That reward would be the topography of the digital infrastructure of American elections, which sets them up to act in a bigger role than they ever could have acted in 2016. They can act quicker and strike harder. Both of these possibilities are frankly not good.
No, don't like that.
So we know the Russians, like the rest of the world, and literally everyone in existence, including Trump, thought that Hillary Clinton was going to win the 2016 election. Look at this. Mike Pence looks like he just bought a new car and the garbage truck just backed into it. Then there's Trump, who looks absolutely horrified that he just won the world's worst job. Watching these clips reminds me of when he first won, everyone's like, the gravity of the job has really humbled him. And not even 5 hours later, he started fighting with Hamilton on Twitter. Getting back on track, in the event of Hillary winning, the Russians had a whole campaign prepared to try and dispute the credibility and legitimacy of her election. The Russian government made a request to the State Department to have poll watchers in the United States. The plan with these folks was that after Hillary won, they would start talking about all the voter fraud they saw and how the election was rigged. To assist their diplomats in making ridiculous claims, they had their troll farm ready to go. They were going to spread the hashtag #DemocracyRIP. This was something they had set up and ready to go. In this hashtag, they would reveal the US election systems had been hacked. Therefore, Hillary's election would have been illegitimate, they would argue, even though they were purging Democratic voters from the election systems. The consequences of this action, if it had happened, would not have overturned the election results or resulted in an impeachment of Clinton, but rather would have put a level of cynicism unfounded in Americans. One thing about this potential attack that really troubles me is that its main goal was to undermine confidence in our elections and to make Americans cynical about our elections. If you look at what Putin has done to the Russian population, he has instilled such a degree of cynicism in his people that it's ultimately led to mass apathy, stifled their innovation, and the degradation of Russian civil society. No one there cares because they have no incentive to care. Their votes don't matter, any candidates that would help the Russian population is killed, and the government keeps an iron thumb on them. In order for Russia to truly become a real superpower that has economic power and doesn't just get a seat at the table because they have nukes, they have to inspire their citizens, and Putin sees that as incompatible with his rule. So the only option Russia really has is to compete with the West by dragging the West down to their level through these attacks on American institutions. So if you like this video and you want to see more hot, sexy videos about election infrastructure, hit me with that thumbs up, baby, and let me know what you want to see next.